Welcome, travelers. I'm Josh.
And I'm Lee Wanika, and this is Tabletop Journeys, where we will be your not-so-humble guides on the quest for RPG adventures.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode. Very excited to be coming to you once again with my two illustrious co-hosts, Mr. Michael Ross the White and Mr. Lee Wanika Miller the Gray, the two wizards to my tower in the middle of Orthanc. How are you gentlemen doing today?
The middle of the earth, perhaps?
In the middle of the plains of Isengard. Never mind. Anyway, how the hell are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here.
It's going to be one of those shows.
I'm positively goofy with giddiness.
Yeah. Goofy with giddiness.
Or I mean, giddy with goofiness.
Giddy with goofiness?
Giddy with goofiness? Yeah, either way.
Yeah,
Either way, yeah. We're really excited to be coming to you again tonight, though. We're going to be doing another episode after how well things were received last time around when we talked about the monster manual and kind of picked out a couple of monsters, talked about them, and kind of built some encounters around them to go ahead and show you how they can be used in some ways that our evil, devious minds, kind of play with that a little bit. We're going to be doing another one here. So we have all sat down and studiously over the last several weeks scoured through the 2014 Monsters Manual and the 2024 Monsters Manual to go ahead and find some candidates, and we're going to discuss those candidates and some potential encounters with you this evening. So, gentlemen, I'm gonna audible a little bit here because we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but I think that it is only right and proper since Michael, last time we put you on the spot since this was your idea. We put you on the spot to go ahead and go first. I think that it is only right and proper that we revert back to TTJ standard and go in initiative order.
Okay.
As would be right and proper. And since I've got the microphone, I'm making the call.
All right, that's fine. I assume D20. I mean, we all know D12s are better, but traditionally
D12s are the best die. Correct. Yeah, but traditional Dungeons and Dragons
arguably the best die.
Actually, Michael, if you want to roll a D12 for your initiative, DM Josh will let you.
Well, I rolled a D20. A D12 probably would have been better. I got a 2.
I also have a 2, so Michael and I for sure will be rolling off.
And I'm rocking a 16.
Oh,
okay. All right. So Michael, roll it again. Let's see who gets to actually go second.
17 that time.
That's a 6 for me. So, so Michael, you still get to go second because that was the second round of initiative. So Lee Wanika will lead us off. Mr. Ross will go second, and I'll get to pick up the rear end of the show tonight. So that'll be a good time.
You're batting cleanup. It's the most important position on the team.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, I think that's fourth. I'm not a sports person.
Yeah, no, exactly right. I'm batting third, which really is just the dude before cleanup. He's is the guy that's sitting on first. That's the run the furthest when cleanup dude hits. So, regardless, Lee Wanika, the floor is yours.
That sounds show off my dice case.
Yeah. Well, so and actually, I mean, before we get into the monster, actually, too, because you're going to appear on Farm to Fable soon, right?
We're recording later this week.
So for folks that don't know what Farm to Fable is, Michael, give us the quick primer on Farm to Fable.
Farm to Fable is a Smallville rewatch fan cast. We started a couple of years ago, so we actually predated Talkville, which is like the quote-unquote official one that Tom and Michael are on. I bring on a different co-host. Not every episode is a different co-host, but I have a rotation of co-hosts that Lee Wanika is part of. So we break down the episode, we deep dive into it. We take it, we nitpick the funny stuff, but we take it a little bit more seriously than maybe some of the other shows do. Is like, why did this actually happen other than, well, the writers needed it to? Though we talk about that as well. But it's a lot of fun. It's I think it's a love letter to the show. So if you love Smallville, you will like our show. And we treat it seriously, but we also call out the stuff that's silly and fun. Like we have a counter for how many times people get knocked out, how many times they go to the hospital, how many times a truck explodes, which is a lot more than you would think.
I don't remember that many truck explosions.
There's a lot.
Yeah, apparently.
Really? Yeah. How many times the new guests show up naked when they first appear? All these kinds of things.
Nice. I like it. Well done. So, well, anyway, yeah. So, without further ado, then, now that I've bought you some time there, what monster did you pick tonight, and what do you want to say about it?
Yeah, so I had a couple different ideas until the very last moment. I was flipping through the pages trying to get to the monster I was going to pick, and I'll save that because we'll probably do that some other point in time. But then I saw the picture of this creature, and I said, I must talk about this. It is something I really, really like. It's evocative, it's massive, it's the Colossus.
Colossus.
For those who don't know, Colossus. I'm not talking Peter from the X-Men, though one of my favorite X-Men, not the favorite X-Men for me, but one of my favorite X-Men.
Ah,
But I
that's
am
my
talking
Colossus
about
impersonation.
the gargantuan construct. In 2024, it's regarded as a titan. I'll go through some basic stats, but I don't think that's really pertinent too much in this stage as far as what I really like about it. But AC is 23. It's a CR 25 creature. It has a proficiency bonus of 8, strength of 30. If this thing hits you, you done got hit,
You
Yeah.
know it.
right?
Yeah.
You're gonna feel it.
It's a lot. It's got 3 attacks as part of its multi-attack. It's has a slam attack or radiant ray that it's using with that multi-attack, and it also has a divine beam. If somebody's really looking for an idea of what a Colossus would be, if you've ever seen the very first MCU Thor film, the Devastator is a Colossus. That's what you want to think about. It is a divine creation that scorches the earth when it's sent to do its mission. And I think that's the way I would use it in a combat. To talk a little bit more about some of the things that as a GM you want to know about so you know what you're playing with and know when to put it against your tier 4 party, because it's a CR 25. I imagine a tier 3 might be able to handle it, but you are looking at a potential TBK if you take them with a tier 3 party, I would guess. Immutable form, which means it cannot shapeshift. Legendary resistance, 4 per day. That's a lot. He is taking care of a lot of business headed his way. Magic resistance, the Colossus has advantage to saving throws against spells and other magical effects. That covers a lot of ground that things just aren't happening bad to this by magic easily. Between the saving throw, that magic resistance and the legendary resistance, it's tough to throw down a spell on this thing. If you're fighting it, you're legit fighting it. Siege, it's a siege monster, so it deals double damage to objects and structures. So you get it behind a wall, it's coming through the wall.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot. Oh, and did I mention it has I mean, its hit points might be a little weak. I don't know. It depends on your opinion. I mean, would 553 hit points seem like a little light to you, John?
I mean, for tier 4, I mean, that's probably 10 rounds.
Yeah.
You know, you've got if you got 5 heroes that are doing 20 to 30 hit points, per turn, as long as you hit it, that's probably reasonable.
Yeah. It could have been a lot worse, and I think it would have been like, well, it's a Colossus, whatever. So I think it actually measured fairly well based on what I'm seeing here. I've never run a 2024 Colossus, mind you, so I don't have experience with this. But like I said, the picture was captivating to me. It's this giant construct standing over a town with this bright gleaming gem in its chest and its belt and for its eyes. It's just brilliant looking. It's a gorgeous picture. Just what a wonderful piece of artwork. Its slam attack is plus 18 to hit. So basically it hits what it can reach.
Wow. Yeah, plus 18.
It's got a reach of 20 feet, and the average hit is 32 bludgeoning damage. And it pushes its target 20 feet away when it hits something. That's a pounding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
while thematic, I can imagine why pushing something 20 feet away is actually not advantageous for a monster. Although, how much reach does it have?
Its slam attack has a reach of 20 feet.
Okay, so yeah,
so, like it can literally hit you, push you 20 feet, take a step, and hit you again.
Yeah,
and push you another 20 feet.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, this is coming hard.
Yeah.
It has a radiant ray, which has a range of 300 feet, average of 22 points of radiant damage. And when it hits, the target is left prone. That's that devastator beam that Thor was trying to dodge.
Yep.
And then it has a divine beam. Maybe this one's on a recharge 5 and 6. This has a DC 26 for the dexterity saving throw on this thing, and on a failure, you're taking 65 radiant damage.
10 D Michaels on that damage. So that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you fail, if you are reduced to 0 with that beam, you are disintegrated. Endo story.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a killer.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a 26 DC also. So figure by 20th level, your DC for, let's see, what is it? Is a, what is the saving throw? Oh, dexterity.
Dexterity, yeah.
So your wizards are bent. Like, you know, like if you're bent, yeah.
A fighter or a rogue will in
Probably
that tier
okay.
will be okay.
Yeah.
A paladin maybe.
Well, paladin will be able to go ahead and re-roll it anyway, so he'll get 2 shots at it. I mean, that's, you know.
Well, and a fighter would be able to re-roll it as long as they haven't burnt up their
indomitable.
They're indomitable. So I mean, re-rolls are good. Hopefully, if you're a wizard, you're a human, so you can re-roll with your inspiration. Because if you're facing this thing, don't use that early in the day. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
You're going to need it.
Yep.
I really love this creature. It just, to me, really speaks as a great campaign ender. Okay. When I think about bringing like your party through a campaign, and they're defending the people in between armies of chaos and armies of order, and this is obviously on that side of order, perhaps being led by Modrins or other divine forces or whatever that are out to stop chaos from reigning, with people caught in the middle. And this is literally where your party has to play Captain Sheridan, you know, we're not your playthings anymore, get the heck out of our galaxy kind of thing, where you're in the middle and you're literally saying we're going to try to stand up to this thing. And I think that is a terrifying thing to bring down into a campaign as your campaign ender. That's not the big bad. That's the thing that the big bad sent. Right. And the big bad doesn't even have to be that bad, but he calls this thing down and you're like,
no.
And this is what we got to do to try to win, or this is what we're up against. Or maybe this is the thing that's rampaging across the land and your party's got to stop the big bad.
I would use this early.
To stop it.
Yep.
You know, this is like that kind of thing. Maybe something they do makes it sit dormant, and then the campaign, you know, maybe you show it to them in tier 2, where this is devastating. They are not necessarily trying to kill it. They're saving people from it, just trying to escape it. And they are able to do that, but now they've got to find some way. Maybe they trip it and it falls into the ocean. So it takes a while for it to get out, or whatever the case may be, but they know it's coming. And so now it's your campaign is a race against the clock to stop this thing. And I just love it. It just sings to me.
I can see how with the earlier versions of the Colossus, where basically they were animated castles, right? At the end of the day, they like the art very much kind of portrayed them that way. They were still constructs, but they were kind of specifically like animated battlements and stuff like that. Imagine turning a player's own bastion against them in tier 4, where like the big bad evil wizard, like the bastion that they've spent all this money, all the soldiers and all the everything, and then all of a sudden the big bad wizard animates it, and all of those. Now you've got to fight all those soldiers, or fight, you know, and depending on what things you've given it, like, you know, if you've given it like the portal to the Feywild, can it call upon, can a Colossus Misty Step, you know, stuff like that. Like, these are the things that keep me awake at night, thinking about animated castles Misty Stepping through the darkness at me. That's yeah.
Well, you mentioned something that I hadn't even thought about. And when you mentioned Isengard earlier in the episode, imagine that the Tower of Isengard is merely its spear.
Yeah.
And the rest of it is underground. So your version of Sauron, when all the Ents come in and are there, and they're wrecking havoc on all the Uruk-hai or whatever, and he's like, okay, I've had enough of this. I call forth Isengard.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
everybody once thought Isengard was just the place. And what it is, it's actually the name of the Colossus who now rumbles out of the ground
Yep.
and now
What
starts
band?
swatting ants like they're blights. and now that's on its way to Hobbiton. And now the race is on. Like, these are
Yeah.
cool ideas that
Yeah,
I think you could do with this creature. And that was the point of the Titans. That was the point that Crawford and the rest really wanted to make. They wanted these apex. They wanted an apex creature from each monster type to be so big, so bad that you could literally. What type of monster do you want to be at the end of your campaign? And then you build your whole campaign around it. Last time we talked about building an encounter around a monster. This is the monster I want to build a campaign around.
Yeah.
I don't even have the big bad, but I know what my end of the campaign set piece is.
But you have to allow for the characters infiltrating the Colossus, like physically, each going to a different location and then gaining control Voltron style
Absolutely,
and using it
yeah.
against the big bad.
Yeah. Robot
Absolutely.
Voltron or Lion Voltron?
In this case,
Why
I
not
think
both?
robot. But yeah. It depends on the,
Yeah,
I guess, the campaign.
Yeah, because the right answer is always Lion Voltron, but I
Oh,
think
yeah.
you
I felt
know,
bad saying robot.
I know, because everyone feels bad saying
Yeah.
robot. It's true. Because the right answer is
I always
always
liked
Lion
this Lion.
Voltron. I always
I always
liked,
liked-
yeah, I did too, but the right answer is always Lion Voltron. Like, if I'm given the choice between two Voltrons, Lion Voltron. Yeah.
Look, all I could say is, as much as I love the original, you cannot sleep on the Netflix show that came out. That was amazing. But I digress.
We
The
digress, yeah.
Colossus.
Yeah.
As a fan of the Warforged, and I have used the Warforged Colossus from 2014 on a couple of occasions, where that is more like a bigger Warforged, where you put other creatures in it so they do different things.
Yeah.
You know, they can fire from it, they're protected by it, and that was really cool. Basically, this big thing comes in, and there's stuff on it. But this is just a whole different kind of egg.
Yeah.
And I think along the lines of building a campaign around a theme, early tiers you're fighting Modrons or really small things, or the little I forget what they're called, but the little constructy mini creatures or whatever that you're dealing with, those as they're running around creating mischief and havoc. There's just always this constant theme of these things are around and you're constantly dealing with them, and you build up to this, and when this hits, wow, they're going to be like, oop, I hope we learned some stuff.
Yep. I like it. I like it. There's a lot in there that I think could make this really, really cool. So well done. Well done. All right, Mr. Ross, what do you got, sir?
I want to talk about the Banshee. The 2024 version. It is a wailing harbinger of death, medium undead, chaotic evil, basically humanoid, spectral, ghost sort of spirit. So in 2024, it is a CR4 creature. It's got 12 AC, 54 hit points. It can fly and hover. You know, there's really nothing that out of bounds if you are familiar with the other versions or just even like the lore of ghosts and banshees. It has resistances to most things, so acid, bludgeoning, fire, lightning, piercing, slashing, and thunder. And it has immunities to cold, necrotic, poison, charmed, exhaustion, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, and restrained. So if you're fighting this as a low-level party where you don't have magic items, it's going to be kind of difficult to do a lot of damage. And it doesn't necessarily hit too hard, but kind of the thing that Banshees are known for in the lore is their wail. In 2024, it has an ability called Deathly Wail once per day. If it's not in sunlight, and anyone within 30 feet can hear it, so you could have a character who is deaf, or you have some sort of magical manipulation to remove the ability to hear, you would be immune. But any creature within 30 feet, DC 13, Constitution, and if you are less than 25 hit points, you just drop to 0 hit points. Now in the lore, you die. That's the thing about the Banshee. If you hear its wail, you just dead. But in D&D, it doesn't quite work that way. You would just drop to 0 hit points, and then by the rules, you would be dying. If you have more than 25 hit points, you take 3d6 psychic damage. Some other abilities it has: detect life. It just sort of senses if there's a living presence in up to a mile away. It's incorporeal, so it can move through things. It can actually do damage it takes damage if it ends its turn inside of an object. So that would be one way you could, if you have an ability to move it against its will, you could cause it damage. For attacking, it has multi-attack. It can do 2 corrupting touch attacks. These are both melee +5, and they do 1d8 +3 necrotic damage. So it's not really a lot of damage, but if you have a low-level party that doesn't have a lot of magic spells or magic items, that could be difficult to damage it because of the resistance immunities. And then again, if everybody has less than 25 hit points, it could take out the entire party in one shot. The reason I like to use Banshees is, again, the more of these we do, the more people get to know me. One of my favorite things to do is to try to find ways that you interact with creatures that isn't just hit it with a stick till it stops moving. And I know I'm not the only one that does that. I'm not saying I'm unique, but that is something I always try to bring to my games is how do we interact with this creature beyond it's just a bag of hit points we got to reduce to 0. And leaning into the lore of the creature. I have used the encounter before where you have to obtain the wail of the Banshee. You have to get it to agree to give you its wail. So usually there's some lore tied around with like why the Banshee is there. In the 2024, it has a D6 chart. It is appears prior to a family member's death. It haunts the site where it was executed. It laments a lost love. I think that's like the very classic version. There was an untimely death of its lover, its partner, and now it haunts that site. You know, again, like they're on the cliffside waiting for it to return from sea when the partner was died by shipwreck, that type of thing. So rather than just trying to hit this thing, you have to interact with it, find out what it wants, needs, and get it to agree to give you its wail, which could be within a magical container. It could be as simple as just like a bag of holding or just literally any container, or it could be a special ensorcelled one. So it's not about fighting it. It's about in the encounter, the role play aspect of it. And then that wail could be used. Maybe it's something that a wizard needs for a spell. It could be just a way to like, you have to infiltrate like a thieves guild. It's all low level because you're like level 1 or 2. So yeah, you just instantly take out everybody within 30 feet. That's kind of like a perfect sort of necrotic grenade that you could throw. I'll leave that up to the DMs to figure out why it's needed. But I just really like the idea of role play first, combat second. And then again, if things go sideways, then you're fighting it and you have to worry about it. So I love ghosts. I love banshees.
That's hot. That is hot. Bringing the heat, Michael. Like that's
what a great heist.
Yes.
Right.
Great heist.
Yeah.
Or and just because I like turning things on a dime and I love where you're going with this, how about you're tasked with giving the Banshee back their whale?
Oh,
their whale was stolen from them.
And it's being used because it's not with the Banshee, it's being used outside of what they need. So now the Banshee, who can't do what they're supposed to do, lament that loved one, haunt the site where they're executed so that nobody's ever executed there again.
Yeah.
They need to get that back so that they can stop these unjust executions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it's like an X-Files episode. Like you just show up, there's like 7 or 8 commoners that are dead. Some of them have like the white hair. They look like there's no wounds on the body. It looks like they died of fright. Magical detection shows necrotic energy, but there's no obvious point of origin. And then you're like following the people who'd stolen it before.
Yeah.
I like that.
I really like that. So yeah. Yes.
So what's funny is that, so you're seeing like Doctor Who, like, kind of like mystery of the Banshee sort of thing. I'm seeing like in Star Trek The Next Generation, the episode where the Enterprise and the Bozeman gets caught in a time loop and they almost collide, and they collide numerous times. But then time kind of resets itself. I can imagine where someone has stolen the Banshee's whale, and the only way to get them their whale back is to repeat the thing that happened to give them their whale that made them a Banshee in the first place. So maybe their lover has somehow like manipulated time to go ahead and come back, come back from the dead and blah blah blah. Like that's like there's maybe that gets a little complicated, but I can see sort of like a making history right sort of through difficult choices sort of plot line with that. I mean that's a Guardian of the Grave episode right there.
I mean, it could be like almost like a Groundhog Day, but like a sad
right
Groundhog Day,
like a sad Groundhog
we
Day.
have to keep going back in time and like murdering a guy or like causing like trying to keep someone from getting away from a tragedy. Like,
right,
well, no, they have to fall off the cliff, so we have to like make sure all the other horses are already like rented for the day, or the other road is closed, so we have to like make a little avalanche so that they have to go that road. And every time you just get closer and closer, and the ultimate goal is an untimely death of a beloved character. Like I love the moroseness of that.
There's something
that's a great Halloween episode right there.
Right?
Oh, right? Yes. That's like a one shot too, or like a special episode of a campagn, like a one off. Because
well, except the only thing I can think is that it may take more than one episode for them to go ahead and do it, right? Or more than one session, right? Because like if they get all the way to the end and it's not right, and they begin back at the beginning, I can imagine like that could stretch on for a little bit of time. And hopefully,
you imagine you just go, you've got your regular gaming group, and you do the mission like, oh, we did the best we could, or think we got it, and then like you sit down to this next session, it's like,
and you're back at the very beginning,
and then you start right at the beginning. Whatever song you had playing, whatever the bards are playing, you have your bardcore tune playing in the background, or something playing in the background, and then you start with the exact same thing. And the tavern keeper's like, "Good morning, everyone. We've got road bacon and kippers today." And the whole thing begins again, and your party's like, "Wait a minute. Didn't we do this last week?" That's awesome. You might get away with that 3 times, but I think the third time your players may revolt. Unless they're totally down for the joke.
Yeah. You got a bard playing "I've Got Thou Babe" and
I got thou babe.
I mean that's so if I may for a second here, this is kind of what I love about these kind of episodes is that there's that great seeds of an adventure take us all in different directions. And which kind of what I love about it. So
excellent.
All right. I am done, sir.
That's a lot of fun. All right. So let me go ahead and dive in here. So I am. So last time I took the Minotaur, which is kind of a not traditional D&D monster. This time around, I'm taking a certainly unique D&D monster. Although I'm not necessarily sure that I would call it a traditional monster. But tonight I am going to discuss the Thri-Kreen. What was called the Thri-Kreen in 2014, and what's called the Thri-Kreen Marauder in 2024, because now they've kind of divided out the Thri-Kreen into 2 different ones. You've got the psionic ones and the not psionic ones, basically at the end of the day. We're saying in kind of the pre-show, this might be a first for me in the 2024 monster manual. Hot take, whatever for the show here tonight. I don't think that I prefer this stat block over the original one. I think that there are some notable sort of differences which kind of take away some of the special stuff that were the Thri-Kreen. Now I wonder, Thri-Kreen was kind of originally a Dark Sun monster, and so I don't think that we can assume that that's happening because there's any kind of Dark Sun material coming out. I think that there's probably a statement to be made about what this monster manual is at the end of the day in terms of like what its function is. And we can look at the stat blocks and say they've taken a lot of the flavor away from the Thri-Kreen in 2025. They really stripped down this stat block for better or for worse, right? Michael, not to steal your thunder, but I know at the beginning when we were talking beforehand, you're like, well, yeah, that's because this is a book of monsters to go ahead and kill, not anything that you want to be remotely interested in scientifically or whatever.
Yeah, and they are paring down the lore, and it's more mechanics than anything, and the lore is very generic so that you could apply it to different things. I mean, in some way that's a cleaner version that you can drop into your world, but it does lose some of that flavor. But I feel like I know why they did it, is to make it more useful for someone who's new, who doesn't know what never heard of Dark Sun. They're just like, oh, this is a cool ant creature. Let's fight it today.
Yeah, that's fair, but I also think that like there's some weird choices that they made in terms of like how they laid the monster out. So the statistics are exactly the same. The attributes rather. There's no change there. The hit points are the same. The armor class is the same. The speed is the same. The initiative is the same. Everything is the same. They did take it from chaotic neutral to neutral, which I thought was an interesting and probably more appropriate twist. Because if I view kind of like an act of nature, I view it as totally neutral. Like I don't necessarily view these as chaotic. You know, but the thing that is interesting is that they took away the chameleon carapace ability, which is the one that gave it advantage on stealth checks because it can basically blend in with its environment. That's gone now. It doesn't exist. It's taken away altogether, which is very, very interesting. The other thing is that they basically made the variant version of the Thri-Kreen the version. So there was a version that had a bite and a claw, and then there was a variant that had the bite, the claw, and a couple of weapon attacks. It had its pole arm, the Githka, and it had the Chachka, which is the serrated blade thrown weapon, right? And that was the variant. The variant, you could add those on there. Now the new one only has the Githka and the Chachka. It does not have the bite. It does not have a claw attack, which means that it has also lost its ability to go ahead and bite for poison damage. Although now the Githka does poison damage, but way, way less, right? So it used to be that in 2024, that if you failed your saving throw on the bite, then you were paralyzed and poisoned. You gained the paralyzed and poisoned conditions, as opposed to now, if you get hit with the Githka, it does basically a token amount of damage. It does 1d8 plus 1 damage and 2 poison damage, which, for a CR1 creature, it makes sense that it's minimal, but it's also it's just kind of like it is streamlined in a way that's just kind of like, well, that's just kind of less cool.
Right.
And I hadn't seen that really yet in some of the 2025 monsters. They had been streamlined, but they had been streamlined in ways that made sense and actually kind of made them more cool, made them easier to run, and made them a little bit more deadly. This one doesn't seem to hit the mark for me. And so I'm curious what you guys think about that.
I have a sense that there's probably one that hit the cutting room floor. That there may have been because the Marauder is a CR1, the Scion is a CR8.
Yeah, that's a big divide.
That's a big gap. I'm guessing that there was probably a CR4 or 5 somewhere in the middle. That for space they couldn't, because they took out a lot of the narrative, and there's no Dark Sun. And they were not made a big part of Spelljammer, which largely failed. And they're not part of Eberron at all,
right?
Unless you put them there in the Mournlands or something like that. Stay tuned. But I would say that because of those multiple factors, getting the one that has all the bites and all of that, effectively, you're just making it stronger and hitting a little bit harder. I don't know if there's a narrative through line to make that absolutely necessary. Yeah, with 503 monsters in this book and a page count that has to be adhered to, and quite honestly, probably not much more art that you wanted to commission, it makes sense that middle one had to go. But I have a feeling that that's where that is. They just didn't have a way to make that more narratively cool. And one of them had to be exactly the same CR as appeared in the previous version. So with those as your guardrails, something got skunked, and I think that was it. Was there room to say, let's give us a CR 1/2 and call it a drone or whatever, and let's do a CR2 and give it the bite attack so it has the extra damage and beef up that poison a little bit? Probably yes, but is it narratively much stronger? Probably no. And I think that's kind of where that went.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, I will never, as a content creator, complain about them leaving space to go ahead and make better monsters on the table.
Right.
And it's kind of a bummer. Like, this is, it's a very cool monster, and it just seems like it's made a little bit worse as opposed to being made better. So
a Thri-Kreen Scout would be awesome, and then you give it the stealth abilities, you give it the bite and the poison,
absolutely,
because it's up close, and it only gets the Chachka and doesn't do the spear thing, and and then you let the Chachka do both ranged and melee, and do a little bit more poison damage. I think that's the answer.
Yep.
I mean, it is a CR1 that gets multi-attack, though. If you think about that,
Oh, that's fair.
It's +3, which isn't high, but again, you're fighting a low-level party. That's basically average of 14 damage a turn, plus the poison condition, possibly on 2 different creatures. You could wreck a level 1 party with one of these.
It's not the condition. You just get poison damage. You don't get
poison damage. So if somebody's immune, resistant, or vulnerable, that's where that plays in.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking the poison condition, but still,
it used to be
one of these condition, could mess up a party. Just they get the good initiative and they roll well. You could take the wizard out round 1, but but again, that's still just a bag of hit points. Like it's not super interesting. The poison, I don't know. I don't have a good sense of why I would want to use this over another creature, other than not doing Dark Sun, not. This would be an oddity that the players would stumble upon. A farm has been ravaged. Usually it's goblins. Well, this isn't goblins, and it literally would be like an ant tunnel. They would find a hole in the ground and start going in, and then the queen would be the scion, which is has to be either avoided or negotiated with, because at first, second level that CR8 would just wear them out.
Well, now that they're monstrosities and not humanoids, I would feel much more comfortable with them being diviners that pray to an Ankeg god of some kind, and they roll with an Ankeg. So, which Ankegs are relatively low, they're CR2s, but these would make you could, again, building around a theme. This, you could certainly build a campaign, a tier 1 to tier 2 campaign around Ankegs with Thri-Kreen as their keepers, holders, handlers, subservience, ending with a larger Ankeg of some sort. I think that could be pretty interesting.
Was it Neverwinter Nights 1 or 2 where you just all of a sudden would be in a field and those things would wreck you?
I can't remember. I played, but I played it in a weird way. I never actually played the game. I always set up like you were planning things, and we had a large campaign where we had armies. And so what we would do is we would set up, build all the characters, NPCs for one army and the other. You'd build a pillar, and then you let the AI of the machine do the battle, and then that would decide who won that battle.
Oh, okay.
And then that would be basically I had my roommate at the time set that up, and then I would report to Ben who won that battle, and battles in Alanis, the campaign that we're still playing after dang near 35 some odd years. Those battles were decided using that mechanism because it took players out of it and it let armies kind of do their thing, and we would set them up with how many they had and their strengths.
That's crazy.
This is based on what we did. It was kind of cool. We would do that kind of thing in between campaigns to figure out how things fell.
All right, now I figured it out. I figured out my in here. These creatures would leave behind some sort of, I'm going to say dropping, but I don't necessarily mean it like excrement. No, I do mean excrement. It's not defecation. That produces like a euphoric, almost like an LSD sort of thing, but gives our characters psionic abilities.
Ooh.
I always like the whole chitinous resin could be used for something, and I would love to say that's an original idea that's stolen from some of the alien colonial marine comics where they were scooping up alien goop and they were using that as a hallucinogenic, and it was selling for big money on the black market kind of thing. And you could have a bunch of scurrilous a faction of scurrilous individuals that are basically farming Ankegs for this goo, and then not realizing that somewhere along the lines they've actually opened up a realm to this insectoid world where now you've got these things invading, and they thought they were just grabbing money, and all of a sudden now they're being inundated with these things.
So the enemy's
now you've got an
capitalism.
infestation.
Yeah. So in my version, people would become addicted.
We wouldn't know anything about that now, would we?
Right. So
We wouldn't
so
know
the
anything
people who
about
become
that.
addicted, they would get these like low level psionic powers. They don't really do like they're not like super effective in combat, but they're just like cool. But eventually, you would get to the point where you became addicted, and then you become a thrall of the
Yeah.
scion.
Yeah.
So like eventually they would just be gaining more and more like this, the
Yeah.
drug would spread, but eventually the people who got really, really like into it would become a
Yep.
thrall of the scion.
Yep. Well, and eventually, if
And
they
then-
take enough of the drug, they can go ahead and see through time and space to be able to
Exactly.
pilot spacecraft from, imagine that they have to be on like a Spelljammer ship because they're the ones that can fold space to go ahead. Wait, sorry. I crossed movies again, didn't I?
You saw the
Yeah,
time knife.
yeah.
Yes, we've all seen the
Yeah.
time knife.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then we'll
Yeah,
have
right.
these purple worms. But
Exactly.
yes.
Yeah. So my encounter idea for this. So Lunica, I love where you're going with the scion that worships the Ankeg god. I think that's actually not far off of where I was thinking that, though not Ankegs. What I was thinking is that one of my great loves among D&D and these types of games and everything like that are swarm creatures just in general. Like I think that swarm creatures, like I remember like when I wrote one of the adventures that we wrote a while back, it had like there are agony beetles in the thing in the cave, and they would drop down and like crawl through people's ears and eat their brains from the inside and all that sort of stuff, right? Because agony beetles are awful. Those kind of things, I love those kind of things because they squig me out, they creep me out, and I'm like, if I'm creeped out by them, I can definitely tell other people to be creeped out by them, right? That's an easy transition for me to make. So I'm going to go ahead and make a statement, and I think that this will lay out where I'm going with this.
Okay.
So the Thri-Kreen Mauraders are a CR1 creature, so they are worth 200 experience points. If you look at the new encounter builder, right, a party of 5 6th level heroes for a medium level encounter can fight 25 of them. Now imagine 25 Thri-Kreen crawling through the grass, some of them throwing their ranged weapons, some of them stabbing, controlled by like a CR6 Cyclops, right? Something that is like that has a little bit of psionic power and has basically gathered this swarm of Thri-Kreen and is like a plague of locusts descending across these plains. The Thri-Kreen are eating whatever they want to eat and basically just laying waste to whatever it is. Could you imagine the colossive pant crapping that would happen if all of a sudden this party of freshly tier 2, they have just beaten their tier 1 boss, they're feeling good about themselves, and all of a sudden they're just surrounded by 25 6-foot tall grasshoppers with pointy sticks that are throwing ninja stars at them, that do poison damage and all that, like that's the kind of stuff that keeps me awake at night. And because it's like, sure, like they may only be like a +3 to hit, but when there's 25 of them hitting, some of that's gonna get through.
And they attack twice, so that's 50 attacks.
50 attacks around.
So, yeah, that is amazing. I love it. And you know what? I want to build on this because I love this riff that we got going on. And I think it's going to encompass what you've said, kind of what I let in with, and what Michael has added. So think about this. Ankeg Queen, Ankeg God, they're in a different dimension. They're trying to come into this dimension.
Yep.
They've got to get so many followers. They have to build their hive so large before they can come here of Ankegs or something else.
Yep.
How about all that goop that people are addicted to? You get to a certain point and you become a Thri-Kreen.
Oh, what
Right?
was that? What was that TV show? Where you had the bugs that basically would kidnap the kids? Forbidden Skies?
Yes, but I'm thinking more along the lines of Kafka's work.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking like literally they're becoming these things, and that is opening up this portal to this other realm, this other pocket realm where the Ankeg Queen can finally come in. So the
Falling Skies. Yeah.
Yes, with Noah Wiley.
Yes.
So you've got your party at lower levels, they deal with an Ankeg. Okay, everybody expects that. They don't think anything of it, and all of a sudden anything that's an insectoid becomes a whole thing, and all of a sudden whoever, like, a swarm keeper ranger is a problem, right? All these other things can become problems as they go, but then when they go to this one village, they hear about, oh, there was this the addiction had taken over this whole village. They yet don't know what happens with it on the way there. Or they get in the village, they're investigating, and then they see one person who's not quite there, but they see that there's things changing about him. And then he's like, I was the last one. And like, what do you mean the last one? And he says, because most of us change into one of their marauders, but every now and then one of us becomes more, and then that's one of the scions. So that's the first time you see a scion, and then all of a sudden, that village of 50, are all Thri-Kreen, and they start coming at the party. So now the party's like, we got to get the frick out of here. We're talking like this is bad news.
And he walks around like Edgar from Men in Black because he's a bug inside a human suit.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean that's straight out of H.P. Lovecraft. That's the Shadow over Innsmouth right there. I mean, it's like it's just with instead of fish people, it's bug people. That might be my level 6 campaign for my home game. I'm just saying.
I also like the idea of like the locust thing where it's like, but it's like every 200 years. These things come out of the ground, and like the first one that comes out, it's like, oh, okay, there's like 10 of them. That's kind of weird. But then there's like, oh no, there's going to be 1,000 of these things coming out over the next year. And the campaign isn't fighting them. It's how do we stop that from happening? Or how do we prepare ourselves to deal with 1,000 of them that's going to happen in X months?
Maybe the Thri-Kreens are people who had the goop and died later on by any means. Then then on that 200th anniversary, then they come.
Then they raise,
Then they raise as the Thri-Kreen, like they molt and they come out, and it's like the cicada thing that happens and makes Gardner smell like fish for weeks on end.
And interestingly, like one of the side effects, like one of the clues is lack of like necromantic energy. Like there's less skeletons in the world because all these people normally would be undead. Skeletons are the possibility, but there's no undead. There's less undead. Like the necrotic people are like, what's going on? It's weird.
What a great Guardians of the Grave mission.
I mean, this has got Guardians of the Grave written all over it. I love it. So this is that's fantastic. Oh, that's so creepy though. That's so creepy. I love it. Falling Skies though, nice callback, because that's not a show. I've not seen that show in a really long time. But that's
I missed it. I knew about it, but I had never watched an episode. So
it was
very, very good. Show. Yeah.
It was exceptionally good. It was very grounded and realistic in many ways for a sci-fi show about bugs and aliens and the aftermath,
invading the world. Yeah,
but it was they had a lot of missions that were all the cool things. You know, like, hey, we got to get resources. We've still got people. We got to educate kids. We got to teach people medicine. We got to get doctors. We got to build stuff. Yeah, it was a lot of good.
I do think that's one thing that they did really, really smartly on that show, was that they didn't start at the beginning. They started several years into the conflict, and then they would tell the history of the conflict by going backwards sometimes, right? It's like, oh, remember when this happened 5 years ago or whatever, you know? I think it was like 2 years. Like 2 years after.
I think it was like 2 years or a year and a half. It wasn't exceptionally long, but it wasn't War of the Worlds either.
Yeah.
Right.
So, okay. So
cool.
Yeah. Anyway, I think
so. Comment down below. What did we miss? What are your suggestions for these creatures that we could have built upon?
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to go ahead and hear your thoughts. Like, are you enjoying? We really like doing these kinds of episodes.
Yeah, they're fun.
So they're an awful lot of fun, and I love just kind of like batting stuff around with these two. So it's a hoot for us. So we'd love to go ahead and hear your comments, obviously down below, like Michael said. And if you are not currently subscribed, please make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, and that way you get notified every time that we do one of our live shows, which comes up every once in a while. Every time that we put out one of our vlog episodes, there's going to be another vlog episode coming out shortly here. Dr. Homebrew is back. Or one of our Friday episodes, or one of our Preservations actual plays that happened on Tuesday. So make sure you subscribe, because there's a whole bunch of stuff happening everywhere Tabletop Journeys. So
and let us know what monster you'd like each of us to do. So if there's a monster you want to see us riff on, put it in the comments and tell us which one of us you want to start with that monster.
Ooh, I like that.
You tell the hosts what show you want to watch.
Absolutely.
Tell us what monster and let us go and let us see what we can build for you.
I also would suggest we could maybe take the same monster and build a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 encounter.
I like that.
Monster. Try to find a way to. It wouldn't work for all the monsters, but we could probably do that with some of them, or at least a couple different options of the same creature, which we kind of did here, but we sort of built on the same one. But we could all go our own different way.
Yeah, there are a plethora of ways that we could go ahead and do this kind of show, but we just really enjoy it, so we want to hear from you out there.
Yeah.
What'd you like about it? What do you think? And don't forget also too that if you want to go ahead and support the show, of course, we would be greatly appreciative if you would go to www.patreon.com/ttjourneys. You get early access to all of our episodes, just like this one, and you also can get invited to our monthly Patreon game. Right now, again, we're still playing a lot of Star Trek, but there will be more things coming down the pike to go ahead and add to that pile. So again, that's www.patreon.com/ttjourneys. But if you can't do that, please like, subscribe. Every little bit helps.
Tell a friend.
Yeah,
Leave a review.
After you watch this video, watch another video. That'd be fantastic.
Share and share alike.
That is not what that sounded like.
No, I was like, did he just stub his toe? Like, what was that? Schnikey's Batman. What was that?
Well, with that, everybody, I think we're going to call it quits there before we get in too much trouble here. That is a wrap for tonight. Again, tell us what you thought about the episode. We'd love to go ahead and hear your comments as always. And we will see you next week. We're going to begin our playthrough of the Monty Python co-curricular medieval recreation program. Next week, we'll be joining you with character creation. And then after that, we're going to be doing an actual playthrough with Brian Saliba from Crowbar Creative. So looking forward to that. Until then, have a good night, everybody. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Later.
Night.